I did post the, let me share my screen. Here we go, right. So this is the wiki with the notes. Matt, are you okay to take some brief notes of what goes on today and fill this out? I posted it in the Slack, so you've got access to it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Do you need to record this, Matt?
We are recording.
We're all recording. Hello, everyone. Okay, welcome to OpenWhisk Tech Interchange number 1520 or something on the 26th of June. I'm going to be the moderator today, and this kind of happens every 2 weeks. So I posted we'll do introductions in a minute, but I posted some agenda stuff to the main list to see if we had anything. So I think there wasn't a huge response, as is the case these days, but most importantly, Chetan wants to talk about the incredible, mind-blowing OpenWhisk standalone server. I'm super excited about this, and I've been playing with it, and I'm blown away by how awesome this is. So Chetan's going to talk about that for a little bit. I'll probably cover a little bit of stuff I've been working on, which is a client.js, which I posted a dev list about. Matt, no doubt, can talk about the joy of graduation. And then, does anyone else have anything they want to add to the agenda?
If there's time, I can talk about a couple of issues I started dev discussions on.
There will definitely be time. There will definitely be time. So yeah, so that's fine. You can jump in after Matt does the graduation stuff. So there we go. That's cool. Okay. Yeah. So what I do in. So normally we do it's introductions to new attendees, but I think as I scroll down, we all know each other, so we can kind of skip that part and get on with the main bit of the agenda. I did have a look over the OpenWhisk main repos to see if there'd been anything super notable in the past 2 weeks. I just kind of skimmed over what's been going on. I didn't think there was huge amounts of stuff, just the usual kind of changes, lots of licensing header stuff going on to support graduation. So yeah, I didn't know there was super notable apart from the stuff that we're going to talk about today. So why don't I hand over to Chetan, and he's going to talk about the OpenWhisk standalone server, which is kind of mind-blowing. So I'm excited to see a bit more about that. Chetan, do you have something to share, or are you just going to talk? What should we do?
Just created a 5-minute slide just now.
All right,
just to highlight what is done.
If I stop sharing, I think that allows you to share.
Okay. Just okay. Yeah, it should be fine.
Cool.
So okay. Anyway, basically this is about the OpenWhisk standalone quick start or OpenWhisk standalone jar. We need to, I think, figure out the right name, but this is the current name we are using it for it. The main idea of this was sometime back we had a discussion in our team on simplifying the developer tooling. So some of our team members have developed a new debugger, which they will be talking about later. And then there was this talk on local development or CI/CD testing. It's to a level possible with mocking the Node.js server, like launch the Express and then simulate the OpenWhisk kind of interaction. But if you want to do it for composition sequences, it becomes tricky to do all those kind of testing. And then came the idea that basically OpenWhisk is just a bunch of Java logic so far with no significant OS specific or any other dependency. So it should be possible to extract the core logic and still run it as a single jar outside of any Docker environment, and let it manage the local Docker for that matter. So So that was a trigger point, and then around like a one-day exercise, this whole project or this module was born. In the end, it supports it's lightweight and less than 100 MB right now, 84 MB jar, which you need to download. It's fast to start at 10 seconds, under 10 seconds on my Mac. So should be possible for most of the developers. It has a couple of inbuilt pre-flight checks so as to help newbies or new users while trying out OpenWhisk to guide them on what might be the possible issues before they start developing. So they would check whether the local Docker is available, WSK is configured, present, the Docker can be invoked or not. So it has a couple of pre-flight checks to help that case. It leverages the lean OpenWhisk. So underlying the crux, the secret sauce is the lean OpenWhisk feature, which was added, I think, a couple of months back, which allows to have a unified process which does not have dependency on Kafka for controller invoker interaction. It uses by default an in-memory store. So everything is volatile. Whatever you create gets lost the moment the server gets to stop. But you can let it connect to a CouchDB or whatever the storage you have, and it's supported by OpenWhisk if you want. You can support. You can configure to use a custom runtime manifest, custom configuration, and adapt it as per your local needs for the local developer needs as you want. It supports bootstrapping a default set of users. So by default, it bootstrap the guest user and the system user so that by the time server starts, it's ready to use. So if you want, you can extend it to add your own custom namespaces, which you might be provisioning for your CI/CD test setups. It runs on Mac, Linux, and surprisingly on Windows also. I did a brief test. I've yet not run the whole basics test suite. I plan to run it tomorrow. But on a Windows 10 with Docker installed, it would automatically be able to execute at least Node.js and basic stuff. It was working fine. I expect most of the things to work there in a normal way. Coming to target audience, there are two sets of users. One is the OpenWhisk users. So users which use OpenWhisk or implement actions on OpenWhisk or trying out OpenWhisk. So it simplifies the local development. So far, we had the options of Vagrant, which involves spinning up a whole new VM, which is a bit heavyweight. Then we had this option of a Docker Compose-based tooling, which has been pretty useful so far. But over the period of time, I've seen people struggling with some error or other because of multiple services involved with so many local ports to be needed and permission issues cropping in. So it targets that audience. So they should be able to get up and going in under 10 minutes on a new setup and play around with OpenWhisk and create and launch OpenWhisk actions easily. It's suitable for CI/CD setup. Nick has so far tried it out for some of his composition tests, and he confirmed that it works fine for it. I ran the whole basic test suite. On Mac, it shows a failure of around 15 test cases, which I believe is due to the way the networking differs between, like, if you run outside of the Docker and try to connect to a container, there's a difference in how the Docker reaches to the container. But on Linux, when I ran the same test suite, the whole test suite passed, leaving the Unicode test case error. So it should minimize the friction that new users face when trying out OpenWhisk and let them try out and play and see whether it meets their need or not. The second set of audience is the OpenWhisk developers, the people who work on the core repo or want to contribute to the core repo. Right now, there's a big uphill learning in terms of using Ansible to get the whole thing right. And any change, build, restart takes, for me, at least under more than 5 minutes if I have to touch invoker or controller at any moment of time. So it should reduce that friction. So that was a personal target for me, so that I should be able to now make a change and see it in effect, at least if I'm not touching the Kafka side or the container factories. So if I'm working on any other part of the core repo, those should be easy to develop now in a faster way. As a user, there are a couple of ways to launch. There's a WSK dev target now also, so you can just launch a WSK dev standalone. If you want to have a custom manifest, then you can provide that. Otherwise, it would use the default runtime JSON, or you can use the normal Java minus jar way and do it. So before talking about the next step, we can see a demo just to see. Okay. It was already running here. So, so right now the build is in core standalone build libs. I've modified the build now. It would also copy it to the bin directory while the build. So if you just launch it, it would then start OpenWhisk. It will do a couple of pre-flight checks whether the Docker CLI is configured, whether the Whisk CLI is found. If the Whisk CLI is not found, it would also log a URL on where you can download the Whisk CLI. It would check whether the WSK props is configured or not. So it would do a couple of checks, and then it would launch the server. And if you see and try to access it, you can access it at localhost, and it is pretty much the standard controller stuff working and showing for you. If you see the API E1, you can see it has a build. It is the Swagger stuff would not work definitely, but yeah, most of the stuff works. Invokers would come out to be 0, which is expected with the lean OpenWhisk. And then you can do simple stuff like run and create open like normal actions, and so action create. And yeah, it would invoke it, and you can see it working. The logs also work. There's a bit of difference between the standard logging and different loggings. So it uses a kind of a workaround. So the core implementation uses directly reads the file and is much more precise in terms of the boundaries. This one just uses a WSK log, the Docker logs command, and with the start and the end times to fetch the logs. So as next step, once the PR gets merged, which would take some time to get the Travis happy, we can add it as a GitHub release in the core repo. So people should be able to download under the release. We can, leaving the legal aspect aside, I think we can mark it as latest and unstable there until it is blessed. And we can later include it as part of the votes when we release the stuff. And then we can later, once we see, let's say after 1 to 2 weeks, if people use it and find it okay, then we can update the websites and the README to refer it as one of the options for user to try out OpenWhisk. So kind of the entry point into exploring OpenWhisk. Yeah, that was it from my side on this aspect. Any queries and thoughts or any wish list, we can then tackle it later now.
Okay, I am really blown away by how incredible this is. So I've kind of played a little bit locally and been trying to use it to run tests against for the client.js projects, and it was really, really good. So this is a huge step forward, and I think this is a great option for people to try the platform. Kind of ran into quickly kind of feature requests is around, one was around the catalog. So basically what it was like, the catalog and then feed providers. And I wonder if you had any thoughts about how we might make that. Like, I love the developer experience that is so quick and fast. I'd love to, like, it doesn't take any, I love the fact it's just like one command. And so, yeah, but I'm thinking about if people want to use this, especially the feed providers, I know that requires like a couch DB and then a container for the provider. So I don't know if you had any, and as well as installing the catalog actions. So I don't know if you had any suggestions about ideas you had about how we could make that super simple and easy for people to use with this.
Yeah, I yet not gave a thought to it because typically I don't uh, do that kind of workflows in my day-to-day development. But I would give it a thought on what would the easiest way to bootstrap the catalog at least, and so that, or maybe a separate command which, let's say, as a command line option where if the user opts it, then it does something extra, figures out this stuff, and bootstrap the catalog. Definitely, we can look into that. Uh, One area, yeah, it might not work would be, I think, API gateway. That depends on Nginx and quite a bit of stuff. That area also I have not explored on what.
So incidentally, this is what I was trying this morning.
Okay.
I was curious if it worked with API Gateway. Ran into a couple of issues, some I'm trying to fix while I have a little bit of bandwidth. It may be that running on HTTP creates a number of, on the HTTP port instead of HTTPS, creates a number of, or exposes a number of assumptions in the various parts where the protocol is assumed. That's been my experience so far. I've found at least 3 or 4 places where the code assumes HTTPS related to API Gateway deployment and the related functionality. I'm trying to work through those, but it'd be nice if those worked. And I'm deploying the catalog just by running the Ansible playbook. Indirectly, that's running Whisk project deploy. And I would assume that we shouldn't need to do a whole lot to do that. It's really just running Whisk project deploy with the right directory and the right credentials. So it should work, and I've deployed the Whisk catalog just because I needed them for the API gateway stuff. So the net of it is you can deploy catalogs. You can either use the existing Ansible scripts, you can use the Whisk dev tool, or you can just run the Whisk project deploy. API gateway doesn't quite work yet.
Okay.
But yeah, this is great. As you know, I've told you many times, this is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, if it needed, we can add an insecure HTTPS support also, if you think it is needed. That should be possible. But yeah, let's see if minor changes in API gateway flow can fix it. Otherwise, we can think of adding an insecure flag and use a self-signed certificate to get it going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was it, James. So yeah, looking forward to get it merged and then add it to release and let other people then use it more easily.
Yeah, thank you. This is amazing. So yeah, I'm excited to see, especially in CI/CD, it's going to make things so much quicker, which will make us be able to do stuff in just PRs, actually completing much quicker. So this is good. Okay. So I was going to talk about the client jest stuff very, very, very quickly. I did post a dev list about this. Let's see if I can find it in all my many tabs. So I've kind of gone back to this repo, and I was a original author and we did a lot of work in the beginning, but since OpenWhisk is the platform API, is very, very stable, there's not a huge amount of work to do on it now, which is good. But this is a very important part of OpenWhisk, I think, in terms of users, because it's like pre-installed in every environment. And so it's important that it doesn't break and it's stable, and that is good. But I started to have a look through the kind of issue list and maybe tie together some things that we would like to put in a kind of new release longer down the road. It's not immediately needed. And a lot of the stuff was around, it was like some slight cleanups of documentation and then some stuff around CI/CD. I'm kind of working through at the moment. I think I've shipped one of the things that someone reported already around annotations on sequences. So yeah, the kind of stuff I'm looking at the moment is just cleaning up the project itself, right? It's an NPM module, and as with all the JavaScript modules, things get out of date, especially in the project dependencies and the build tools and the testing and things like that. So a lot of the dependencies it uses for testing are very out of date now, and there was some NPM audit stuff that was complaining about when I was doing some stuff recently. So I'm trying to update all the dependencies to the newest, latest, greatest versions, and then, when they're updated, make sure everything still works, and then just kind of strip down anything that's in that package.json. And there's a couple of things that I'd like to do in terms of performance. We had a regression in the previous release where we added a feature around proxy support, but that pulled in another library, and that was bad because it pulled in like megabytes worth of stuff. And in serverless, lots of code equals you get charged for it. So I kind of opened a PR to revert that change and use Needle's built-in proxy support, which is down the bottom somewhere, which is waiting on a review. So if anyone would like to view that, that would be very handy. And then there's a couple of other things to make sure we don't, to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again. I'll be looking into trying to add some kind of CI check to make sure that the node modules directory doesn't get above a threshold when PRs are open, to stop us accidentally pushing new dependencies that are too big without kind of explicitly acknowledging this. And then also, I'm looking into actually shipping a built version to NPM. At the moment, we just ship like source files to NPM, and since serverless time is money, I want to kind of go through and actually ship a built version because that will be quicker for people. So these are some of the things I'm kind of working on. I'm kind of just pulling stuff off the queue and putting in this nominal 3.20 release. If there's anything particular people are interested in me looking at, you can add it or you can comment. If you want to work on any of these, that's absolutely fine, obviously. And just to kind of, I think I've called that on the dev list, but as I'm opening PRs, the thing that would obviously help with is just reviewing stuff so people can thumbs up or thumbs down and allow me to kind of merge stuff. It's just JavaScript, it's just simple Node. Most of the changes aren't particularly complex. So if people have any time or want to help with that, that would be appreciated to allow me to kind of crack on and get lots of these things done. So yeah, nothing huge, but it's just a kind of little bit of the projects that I am working on at the moment.
So you're saying you want to formally release this repo?
Yeah, so it's already been released. So we've already done release for it.
A new release, got it. Okay.
In the future, yeah, it will be when I get all this stuff done, then we will do a new release in the future. Yeah, I was hoping to wait till after we graduated to make it a little bit easier on myself, but we'll see which happens first.
So I've long wondered how we keep maintaining multiple different language clients because I don't think that the other two clients are getting any love at all.
We have other clients. What are the other two?
Don't we still maintain a Python one and maybe another one?
No, we don't. We never made a thing out of the Python one.
Are they still repos though? Do we have to?
No, they are not standalone repos, if I remember correctly. The Python SDK, actually, I don't know. I have to check, but I don't think they're their own standalone repos. I think what you might be thinking of is the Python one, which never really materialized.
Okay.
Is based on the old CLI, and Swift.
And Swift, yeah.
And Swift is part of the Swift runtime. It is not its own. The Swift runtime proxy, it is not its own repo.
We have a Go one as well, right? Because
that's the primary one.
The CLI one. That's what CLI uses now.
Right. Look,
yeah,
there's a bit of weird issue with that one, which creates a circular dependence between the Go CLI and the Whisk deploy.
Yeah.
Well, there's still Apache repos. I mean, there's still top level Apache repos for our project.
But the Python Swift are dead. As far as I know, right? They never really got anywhere.
Yeah. So basically, when we talk about our project repos, as long as they're named project repo, people believe they're on the track to becoming released, and are part of our project. So I think we have this problem in general. We have like 51 repos, give or take, given day, growing. That we probably need to understand which ones we consolidate and which ones we, basically deprecate and how we deprecate.
Yep, I agree. I think in terms of in terms of maintenance for stuff, this is the main. I mean, from the stats I've seen, like JavaScript is like the most popular language, so this is probably the most important one. But I have talked about, I think there might even be an issue open somewhere about it's not scalable to actually maintain like clients for all these different languages.
Yeah.
And whether you use like Swagger has a code gen tool, which apparently I've talked to them, they say it's quite good, and whether you could start to use that to auto generate clients for lots of different languages. But it's quite a big piece of work, and I just haven't ever got around to looking at it.
Red Hat tried this and found that our Swagger isn't as tight as it needs to be. And I remember Ben had tried to sort of get this working, and I think he did even get to the point where he did generate a Java SDK. But I don't know what's happened to it. I think that model makes sense where we can just generate it, and we should just tighten our Swagger.
Yep, I agree. Maybe we should look. I mean, it's just time and volunteers to kind of do this stuff. I think that is definitely the best approach.
Yeah,
but
this came up like a year or more ago, I think, the same topic.
And I think the platform API, is pretty stable, right? So hopefully once you've got the Swagger, if the Swagger ever got good enough, then it's pretty, it's pretty stable. Things don't change that much anymore. So it might be possible, but it's just, it's quite a lot. It's a lot of effort to do that. So I haven't seen a huge amount of, I've seen people ask for the Python one before. I know people ask a little bit, but I haven't seen huge demand for it, although I'm sure it would be used. It's something to think about longer term if people find time to look at this stuff.
And Matt, I stand corrected. There is a client Python and a client Swift.
I thought so, but I always defer to you, Roderick.
No, I should have known not to question you. You've worked more with all of the repos than anybody else.
Yeah, we should probably get rid of them then.
I think I just went through the Apache list. There's probably about 10 or 15 different repos that could probably be archived.
I mean, this is part of like what James said is, if and when we graduate, this is the first thing I want to tackle is, try to figure out how to tighten things up. I mean, I was re-inspired by, Chetan's work on his standalone quick start, because I think that people come into the project, especially with the eyes of new eyes upon us after graduation, they would appreciate having a clear picture of what is our project, what constitutes our project, and where to go for the tooling or the Swagger or whatever it might be.
Cool. All right, that's good. That's good chat. Yeah, definitely. I think slimming down the project list, because we've got a lot of old projects, is definitely something to do to get some of that stuff out. But yes. Until then, I'll keep going with this. Yeah. Matt, do you want to talk about graduation next, and then we can come to Roderick?
Yeah. First, I think that we've been trying to, not as a direct result of our localized vote, where clearly the community has approved us moving forward with graduation, but we clearly missed the ability to hit the June timeline. So we kind of pulled back and looked to address some issues that were indirectly raised at the incubator level about our processes and our documentation and other things that were clearly signals to us, at least the way I read them, that these are things that if we don't fix them now, then they'll come up again during the incubator vote, and we're still trying to address them. So for my own part, I know that I spoke to Dave on Slack and perhaps Roderick as well about, the whole thing about Docker Hub and publishing images came up. And I think that we're looking for a better plan, and Dave Grove believes he's had a discussion and seen another project, what we could move towards, and we will create processes and issues and email lists, to communicate and discuss the way forward. But in the interim, I tried to recently, since in earnest this Thursday night, tried to at least try to get a handle of what images we were producing and put clear ownership, boilerplates, and direction to our main project repos and documentation on all of our images. And you saw I posted yesterday a list of images I think that that we should look to deprecate and get rid of, and this is the first pass of, what does deprecation mean? Can I just delete them, or are there ones that we want to somehow leave up there for legacy? We're worried that users are using them. Others are just lost in time and history, and we might have had interesting source, like some examples that may have been lost, or we might want to recover and look at. So there's a lot of repos I listed, and a lot of nuances to handling different groups of them. But I appreciate feedback on that. In the meantime, I got instant feedback as expected on the disclaimers I put around the repos saying these are not convenience binaries, blah, blah, blah. I tried to make a quick adaptation this morning, and I sent an email to our private list asking for guidance from our mentors, which is the only direction I got. Again, I'll just express here, that if it wasn't clear from my private email, that I'm a bit upset that, we're not getting better direction and guidance at the incubator level. If they're, that we're basically being sent to email lists and ask your mentors, which are basically seems like, go off and iterate on this and spin, to cause you problems. I'd rather have pointers to solutions or pointers to positive examples. So, I don't know what this means for graduation. This whole Docker thing looms, and will satisfy the incubator board. But regardless, I think we need to start the official incubator level vote, and make sure when Dave gets back from his conference, we start enacting his plan to open the issues and to fix where we eventually might change how we produce Docker images, or how we produce them, or where we put them eventually in what repo or what repository or what archive, and figure out make sure we have these in place for when we start the vote. But we think we definitely clearly need to start the vote next week. The calendar, the vaunted calendar says we should allow for 2 weeks of the incubator, and the July board meeting, we breathe a sigh of relief, but it's July 17th. So we don't have a lot of time, with the July 4th holiday in the US creeping up on us, that people take long, long weekends. We need to figure out how to get the vote started meaningfully next week, in my opinion, to have a chance at July even. So I'll just say that. I don't know if Roderick has any comments about that, because I know that he's thankfully been the point of the spear, leading the way through this.
I don't have anything to add. I think just that, as you said, the calendar is fixed and July 4th weekend looms. So we have to get going if we want to hit the next board meeting.
Yeah, I think we need the first available date next week that we can submit to the incubator. We need to do that.
Yep.
All right. And that's about it. And that's about it.
All right. Keep fighting the good fight, chaps, on that, and we will get there eventually. And we can have a big party. Roderick, you're ready to take the stage? Tell us about what's going on.
Thanks. So I don't have anything prepared, but I'll just ad-lib this. So I started 2 dev list discussions. One on whether it makes sense for action parameters if the user chooses to export some automatically to the environment and then pass the rest to the main handler. And from there was some feedback that for which I opened a second dev list discussion related to having a context object available to the main handler, so that you can consolidate context-specific activation information in that object and separate them out from the main arguments. And moreover, if you're using intra-container concurrency, sort of the work that Tyson and others have done, you don't have activation variables clobbering each other inside the container. And I think, there was also a point about Knative and whether there's interaction there or not. I think there isn't. And I think you can treat each of these separately in that.
Well, what we did, if you looked at Knative, what we did is we had collisions already according to single entry point. So I was hoping that we would, create reserved names or name prefixes, and we would separate out things in the payload to different init data from context data to whatever.
Right. So my proposal for if we wanted to support this kind of partitioning of arguments on the action into environment or not, is to allow actions to declare that their intent for having their partitioned, their arguments partitioned, and then use a convention that environment variables essentially start with a capital letter. And then the system can automatically partition and then send a request into the runtime that says, here, environment variables at init time, export them before the code is evaluated. And then at runtime, you don't get those variables. And it wouldn't be backwards breaking in that it's opt-in. The user has to be aware of this. And the user, by exporting things to the environment, is accepting the risks that the environment variables are global, not just to the function, but to the entire process. And anybody could potentially observe them. There is some aspect of that. I think the point about the context that Tyson mentioned is only tangentially interesting in that the context object discussion could be had completely separate of this, and what variables you make available inside the context object are, in one aspect, and in the issue that he opened, are basically specific to the system provided variables we're exporting to the environment, which I think more cleanly belong inside the context object. Whether you put more general user provided environment variables there or not, I think, again, it could be a separate discussion. I don't think it makes sense to do that. But once you have a context object, then you can talk about what else should go in there. So the devless discussions are open. I don't think I opened issues yet for them. It depends on feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Knative influences me in a great degree, because in terms of having cross-platform compatible runtimes, there's an expectation for the use of the environment by Knative native functions, and so we should look to try and embrace popular paradigms that are follow-ons to the 12-factor application approach on Kubernetes, where things are in the environment. At the same time, I think that we can do better. That goes back to what I tried to say probably badly, is that as a function developer, we're trying to train people not to realize they're working in an environment at all, that their entire scope of their world is the function. And we should try to make available things. That's what I thought Tyson was suggesting, is that we make available to the function itself the context, so people don't have to repeatedly go saying, oh, open source process, get environment variables and bring in a library to import them all and whatever. That seems like boilerplate we should be doing for them as a serverless developer, so they can get about their work and write their task, their function. So
yeah, I think purist me would have agreed. More practical me, having lived in the world of outside serverless for a while, the reality is there's
I'm saying
numbers
coexist. Can't they coexist?
Well, they can, but I think the world exists largely in a world where you have environment variables. I mean, if you deploy a container, you set environment variables. If you deploy AWS Lambda, you have environment variables. Knative says you can have environment variables.
The world is being trained by Docker imaged Kubernetes platform developers, and IBM is part of that bandwagon. And the messages put everything in the environment. So that's no surprise. That's no surprise.
Right. So that's why I'm saying they're separable discussions. One is, should we support environment variables? Yes. And exporting them automatically from action parameters to the environment. A completely separate discussion, I think, is whether a context object should exist and what should go in it. And I think you can discuss them separately, and whether environment variable should eventually be available inside a context object if it exists could then be a point that can be discussed, but neither exists today. So I think it makes it for a confusing discussion to say we should have a context object and all environment variables should only be available in context, because then you're not separating the concerns properly. And you're not sort of tackling, I think, the more fundamental orthogonal issues.
No, I agree that they can be treated as separate issues, but I think that ideally they need to be discussed together. And if we actually change the code, we should do it as one pass to because if we rebrand our contract to what the function developer expects, we should be doing it like a major point release. And
yeah, I guess so neither of her proposals actually requires a significant contract change. Actually, I would say no contract change at all.
Right, exactly. I mean, again, I think that from my perspective, the work we've done in Knative, try to bear that out. And I thought that we do already support uppercasing and moving a certain set of variables into the environment as well. So I think you can preserve the contract. We've already proven you can preserve the contract and run a Knative environment. But I think we can do better and move in the direction that Tyson suggested as well.
Okay, so we can continue this on the dev list.
Yeah, of course.
That was it, James. Thanks for
All
giving me a few minutes to talk about that.
That's all right. Thank you, Roderick. Does anyone have anything else? Michelle, I saw you, Mikhail, sorry, I saw you sneak in late. Do you have anything to share? Or I'll give people 15 minutes back.
No, not really, but I'm working on the Knative stuff, but I'm doing a big thing, but I don't want to say anything until I have something that I can demonstrate. So, big surprise if I can work, if I can show what I'm doing, if it works. Anyway, nothing else.
Fingers crossed. That sounds very exciting. Okay. All right. Does anyone, Neeraj, do you have anything do you want to add or go to close the meeting?
Nothing from my side.
All right, cool. Okay, so next meeting, the kind of thing is this 10th. I think I have it as the 10th of July. Yeah, I've had that as the 10th of July. So we need a moderator if anyone wants to volunteer.
Should we skip that one just because of July 4th? I know, not everybody's in the US, but
yeah, most of the people on this call are. So I think that's a good idea. I won't be around that day anyway because I've got Serverless London. So yes, let's skip that then. That's a good idea, which would make the next meeting the 24th. My maths is right. Does anyone want to do that who hasn't been a moderator for a while? Matt? I'm looking at Matt.
I've been a moderator recently, more recent than a few other people on the.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I cannot do it on the 24th, but you can put me down for 2 weeks after that.
Okay. Okay. So Chetan, would you like to moderate?
I was hoping Neeraj or Chetan or Mikhail would volunteer. If not, you can put me down. Just hoping to set up to get more people in the rotation.
We need to get more people on the call. I think that's the key.
Yes.
Or we cancel the call.
Yep. Something to talk about later. Anyone gonna take over from Matt, or are we gonna put Matt down?
Go ahead, put me down.
Congratulations, Matt. You are the moderator. Yeah, maybe it's something to talk about. Another call is like, how do we promote this? I do personally find it useful. I think it's useful for us to get together, and I think it's valuable to continue having. But it's just about how do we publicize it better to get new people on board? Because I maybe no one else finds it useful, but I find it super useful for us all to get together every 2 weeks and just talk about what's going on in the project.
I agree.
Okay. All right. With that, meeting adjourned. Thanks everyone for coming. And we will see you in a month's time. Videos will be online. The meeting notes are on the wiki. Speak to you all on the dev list. Goodbye.
Thanks, James, for hosting. Bye.